Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Three's In. Bubbo here. So, I took over the 12th Student Squadron at Randolph Air Force Base in the summer of 1986. And come the spring, early summer 1987, we were set up for a Headquarters Air Training Command IG, Inspector General, and Stanival inspection. Yay. Well, with that being said, a friend of mine who worked as executive officer up at Wing Headquarters called me aside in a week or two leading up to the inspection and said, "Hey, listen, Bob," he said, "they have you programmed to finish third out of the three flying squadrons, the T-38 Squadron, 37 Squadron, and the Student Squadron." Well, that hurt my feelings. That hurt me deeply. So I thought about it and pondered about it for a while, and I talked to my operations officer about it for a while. And then what I decided to do is I called everybody into the squadron. At this point, I had 18 years service plus. I had probably about 19 years service. And I called everybody in, and then I used a line that I had picked up in Korat, Thailand in 1974 when we got our new squadron commander, a fellow named Chet Omi. Just a great guy and a great guy to work for. When Chet took over the squadron, he said to us, "Look, guys," he says, "I have 19 years service." And he said, "I'm either going to leave this billet as a civilian selectee or a 06 selectee, and I don't give a rat's ass which. I'm here to see what I can do to help you with your careers." And that really inspired me. Not only did he say that, he followed up with it. And that was so impressive to me. To have worked for that man. So I thought, okay, I've saved this material now, and now I have 19 years. So I called everybody in, and I said, "Listen," I said, "the heavies up at the senior ranking guys, the heavies up at higher headquarters ranked us, and we came in third out of three." And I said, that hurt my feelings. And I said, "I'm not going to micromanage you with this inspection." I said, "You were hired because you know your stuff. So I'm encouraging you to go back, take a look at your individual areas of responsibility. You know the regulations and the rules and so forth, and you know what shape it's in, probably better than anybody. And this inspection is actually for you guys. My career is already written. And be that as it may, I said, using Chet's example, I said, with 19 years, I said, come next year, I'm going to leave Randolph as either a 06 full colonel selectee or a civilian selectee. So what can I do to help you? And so forth. And kind of took that direction there. And I kind of let it go with that. Well, come Saturday morning before the inspection team showed up, Bobby Brooks called me up at home about 8 o'clock, I guess, Saturday morning. He said, "Listen, Bob," he said, "you need to come in the squadron and see this." I said, "What's up?" He said, "Just come on in the squadron." So I got dressed and headed into the squadron. I'll be damned. The whole squadron was in there, taking care of business. It was heartwarming to see. And God, that just made me feel proud. Those young men and women in there, and I don't think they had much to do to tweak it, but that's all they were doing, just tweaking their individual areas. Okay, so the inspection team shows up, and we start with the usual two lies. Team leader comes in and says, "Hey, Colonel Holliker, we're here to help you." And I come back, "We're glad to see you." And then it takes off. Okay, fine. One of the parts of the inspection was for the team leader to come in and chat with the squadron commander about philosophy of training, about how things were going, this, that, and the other, and so forth. So I'm sitting there, and Colonel O'Grady comes in. Now, I like Colonel O'Grady, but I'll just say I like Colonel O'Grady. So he comes in and he sits down, and I got him a cup of coffee, and he sits there for a minute, and he looks up at me, and he says, Bob, he says, I don't have too much to talk with you about. He says, other than I'm kind of curious, how the hell did you ever become a squadron commander? And I looked at him and I said, well, sir, I said, I'll be happy to tell you if you want to know. And he said, yeah. He said, I'm kind of curious. Because I had a little bit of a reputation as a cowboy, I guess, if you will. I loved the Air Force. I loved instructing. I did not like gripping and grinning, you know. But anyway, so I looked at Colonel O'Grady and I said, well, sir, I said, I can boil it down to two things. I said, I'm not too bad at what I actually do. And I said, the second thing is I don't lie to my bosses. Just that simple. And he sat there for a moment, and he thought about it, and he looked up at me, and he says, well, I guess that sums it up. And he says, I kind of think the same way. Thank you. And off he went. I had an earlier experience with Colonel O'Grady when I was flying with General Svensson one afternoon, and we came in and landed and ended up blowing 2 tires on a wet runway. It was my fault. Make no mistake about it. General Svensson asked whether or not we aero braked on a wet runway, and I told him no. I said just put the airplane down and stop it. Well, he did that and blew the 2 tires. And that's the subject of another video I have here in the stack, and I'll put a reference to that video in the remarks section here, the introduction section here. When I went in to talk to Colonel O'Grady, he was the squadron commander of the 560th at the time. I could have sat there and lied to him, and nothing would have come of it, except I would have known, and that would have eaten at me. I knew myself very well at that time, but that would have eaten at me, and I just wasn't going to do it. So when he said, Bob, he said, you want to tell me what happened out there? And I said, yes, sir. I said, I screwed up really bad. And I told him and was very candid. He said, well, Bob, he said, thank you for coming in and telling me. And that was it. Later, after we both retired, I reached out to Colonel O'Grady, and we had some great conversations about our time together in the Air Force. But what I want to leave my kids with, that's one of the purposes for these videos, is for them to kind of see who their dad was, if you will, and for the grandchildren. But I want to talk about the need for character in your life, for integrity in your life, loyalty, honor, all those values. I put a lot of stock in those. And if I tell you a lie, I've got a problem. I got a big problem. I might get away with it for a little bit, but it's eventually going to catch up to me. And I don't like the taste of it. The other thing is, if I tell you a lie, I have to remember what I told you. If I tell you the truth, just go about and forget about it. You know, and be that as it is. Just let it go. So for the new kids on the block, you screw up, admit it. Admit it. Learn from it. But don't lie about it. Eventually you'll be figured out. Whether or not you're a second lieutenant or a lieutenant colonel, we will figure it out. And it's just not worth it. On a side note, a few months later, after I put in my paperwork to retire, I was up at the DO's office, my boss, the director of operations, and I was having more or less an outbriefing. That was in November of 1987. And we were talking about how the wing was doing and so forth, and about my decision to retire. And he said, well, Bob, he said, since all you seem to like to do is fly, he says, I talked to the boss, the wing commander, and that's all we're going to have you do is just fly. I went, damn, why didn't I think about this 6 months earlier? Anyway, so he said, but he says, I need you to keep a couple things in mind. And one of the things he told me just kind of pissed me off. And I kind of lost it. And I looked at him and I said, well, Colonel Cohen, I'll tell you something. I said, one thing I'll tell you is I never lied to you. And I said, I've sat in staff meetings with you, and you can't say that about those other two knotheads in there. I didn't care anymore. And I just left it at that. And I got up and walked out. A couple months later, his secretary called me aside and she said, listen, I have something I need to share with you. And I said, what's that? He said, well, he said, the ADO was in there carping about you the other day. And Colonel Cohen said, well, let me tell you something I learned about Bob. He says, he won't lie to us. And we can't say that about everybody that works in this building, can we? And that ended the conversation. So hopefully it gives you some insight into the importance of integrity, the importance of character, the importance of loyalty and honor in a friendship. So with that, I'll sign off here and pick it up with another story here coming soon. This is Bobo, Base Gear. Stop.